Good evening. My name is Alexander Hagan. I am the CEO of a medium-sized tech company in Silicon Valley. Previously, I was a financial analyst and a research engineer in telecommunications. Tonight, I want to speak to you about a number of factors since the new decade broke. The new decade broke with the world on fire, with Australia now having lost 50% of its old Gondwana forest, which goes back to the time of the dinosaurs. And in addition to that, we had President Trump assassinate via drone the most beloved and senior general of the Iranians. And I had thought about making a video address regarding the assassination of Soleimani and Mohandas, but I was stopped short somewhat because on another social media platform I ended up at a higher level of scrutiny than I'm normally used to, like about 100,000 viewers. So I thought there was enough scrutiny for me to deal with about my opinion about this unwise and illegal act of President Trump. So in the case of Qasem Soleimani, if you go and look for the Ruptly and Press TV collections on the morning, this has clearly unified the whole Shia world, and with their appeal to the rest of the Arab world for this dastardly assassination of their most senior commander. And the other day I saw that even the son-in-law of the Shah had said that Soleimani was a Iranian honorable hero. And then, of course, they killed an Iraqi commander as well, and 7 other people. And Trump effectively declared war on Iran and giving various vague reasons for doing it, saying even that he did it because Mr. Soleimani wasn't saying nice things about us. So clearly we have the law of the jungle, might is right. U.S. has absolutely no credibility, if it ever did, since our actions in the Cold War. So many things the U.S. has done since the Vietnam War. But this is really outrageous. So that was quite a way to enter the new year, with Australia on fire and Trump throwing matches in Iraq. So that's all bad news. So the good news is, I've been out canvassing for Bernie Sanders, and it became very clear to me when I was talking to people that none of the other campaigns are equipped to defeat Donald Trump. And the idea that Joe Biden could defeat Donald Trump has already been tried by Hillary Clinton, who is a smarter person than Joe Biden. So the idea that a candidate somewhat similar to Hillary Clinton, who happens to be sort of a down-home guy, would be able to beat Trump with all the problems Joe Biden has in his record of having flip-flopped and sold out, which Trump, of course, now has his own record, but his record is Trumpian, whatever the devil that is. So it's clear that we have a very good shot at winning. In fact, we will likely come in first place at the Democratic Convention. But the holdouts, the corporate lobbyists that control the Democratic Party, have fortified their fortress. So after the 2016 election, where Bernie got 46% of the delegates, a number of meetings were made with some sort of a ceasefire between the centrists and the grassroots, and they agreed not to have superdelegates used in the first round of voting. So if Bernie does not get an absolute majority, all delegates at the convention will become unbound, and an additional 15% are basically party-appointed people. And if you look at who Tom Perez has appointed to these committees, there are a list of the people who harmed the Bernie Sanders movement most. Outrageous to put in John Podesta on these committees, who had said, "How do we sink the knife in to Bernie?" in one of the leaked emails. And how do we, it's just a frightening list of corporate hoodlums, basically, that should be thrown out of the party. Tom Perez should be thrown out of the party, or certainly out of the party management. So in short, we have our work cut out for us at the convention with a corporate wing of the party, the corporate state defending ownership of the party, bringing in all the old Hillary Clinton hitters to prevent a Bernie Sanders victory at any cost. For them, they'll continue their patronage system, their graft, their legalized corruption, not just the Democrats, but everyone involved. Because of the way the rules of the system are constructed, it's inevitable that with this amount of corporate cash allowed into politics and this amount of government influence over who gets what contracts and things like the military-industrial complex and telecommunications, you've got a situation where they will get their cut if they go along with the business as usual in Washington as a minority party. So it actually is more in their interest to have Donald Trump elected, because they'll stay in power even if Bernie loses. In fact, the only way that these Democratic insiders benefit is for Bernie to lose, because they will lose their jobs if he wins, and they won't lose their jobs if Trump wins. Think about that. Others can enumerate the Sanders campaign's victories in greater detail, but the campaign is making inroads, being the number one campaign with Latinos, with the youth. So we percolate up into the older generations in the black community by engaging the youth primarily, along with sort of old left figures like Cornel West and many others. He just comes to mind first. I'm sure that Mr. Ta-Nehisi Coates also is on the Bernie train at this point, and a lot of black intellectuals. So we have that wing of the black movement. We have the youth vote. We have 1 million volunteers. He has the highest favorable ratings in the country. Some polls show Biden winning by 2 or 3 points over Trump. Other polls show Trump winning 2 or 3 points over Biden. The same is true with the rest of them. And occasionally Bernie comes out -1 against Trump, with Biden coming out +2. But there are some polls that have come out where Bernie is +9 against Trump. So we have some good polling data to indicate that we can take it, and clearly debate between Bernie and Trump would be historic. And I got this one guy who blamed the Bernie movement for having brought us Trump by not voting in sufficient numbers for Hillary. But I think I sort of navigated that all right. It's interesting how everything's double jeopardy lately. So, for example, Cenk Uygur was endorsed in his run for Congress by the Bernie campaign, and then unendorsed when the politically correct woke community, as they seem to be calling it nowadays, came after Bernie. And then again with this terrific coup of having Joe Rogan come out in support of Bernie fairly clearly, saying that I'm probably going to vote for Bernie, with a just a Bernie video that Joe had alone just on YouTube got 10 million views, and he has these things in podcast format, supposedly 190 million downloads a month. So the guy has possibly the greatest reach of any show that I know of. And then, as people have pointed out, it's sort of hypocritical for Hillary Clinton to go on a show with somebody like Howard Stern, who's far more extreme than Joe Rogan. However, Joe Rogan has debated and talked to right-wing figures that are repugnant to the politically correct. But I made a deal with a family member who is a Trumpite, not by blood, through my wife's family and then through marriage to that, so 2 families away, but she's a Trump supporter. And she agreed to listen to the Bernie interview if I listened to Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. And how am I going to contradict what Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson are talking about to my wife's brother's wife if I don't know what it is? And who am I going to listen to if I don't get somebody who basically has a sort of everyman quality to them like Joe Rogan? But his bigoted comments he made about trans people, I just have never come across that before. And everybody's got things in their past, so I don't want to dwell on it, but we had a magnificently large endorsement this week in that respect. And really just the volunteer engagement machine is working. People are showing up all over the country, phoning, and there are things that I could tell you that are encouraging that I probably just won't go into right now, so that we don't give all of our information to the other campaigns. So the note I want to close on is a somber one, I guess, which is the issue of the destruction of our systems, our natural systems, and our continuing spewing of gases into our atmosphere. Back in the 70s or the 60s, we knew we were destroying nature and it would have to stop in 50 years or 20 years. Different people had different ideas. Some thought it should be done imminently, but it was sort of idealistic. Drop out, tune in, turn on. Drop out of society, tune into a new message, and turn on to, like LSD. Sudden total change. And then we started thinking in a decade or two we had to act. In the 80s, there was generally understanding that in the next couple of decades. But by the 2010s, we really started to get the evidence that it had to be like one decade. This is how the human race is responding to this, whether it's rational or not. But now people think in terms of 2 or 3 years because of how severe all the unraveling of our systems are, which create feedback loops. So if you have the ice shrink, we have less reflectivity. We lose the refrigeration effect of the poles. That slows down changes the way the winds behave because there's less of a heat difference between the tropics and the poles, and can change the ocean currents. Bring less oxygen in. Our main oxygen machine is actually phytoplankton in the seas, and that's contracting about 1% a year, 33% down from what it was in pre-industrial times. So we're shrinking all these natural systems and putting more load on them. So it's like somebody's got a damaged liver or kidney that you're forcing massive amounts of alcohol to, while you're amputating more of their kidney and liver. So that's what we're doing to our planet. So I believe it's time to describe this as a problem of months. What we lost in Australia with the warning signs in Siberia, the potential amount of methane eruption from the permafrost if it melts, also potentially new diseases being released that are locked in the ice. And so what do we do about all this? We have to basically shut the economy down. We have to create a new economy based on sustainability, and it probably should be based on essentially turning the lights off on our whole system and only doing what we can with renewable energy, and maybe 1% of the current fossil fuel load we have now, just to be able to install the renewable energy. But we basically have to halt the entire economy and figure out how to cooperate together to keep everyone moving along in their lives with reduced supplies, local agriculture, but convert the energy over and just halt the capitalist system for a while at least. Give the planet a break. So the extraction that goes on in countries like Chile and Bolivia and in the Middle East, only a small part of that really benefits the local population. So the loss of it, conversely, doesn't really hurt the local population. It mainly hurts the international corporations, the multinational corporations, and the people who are getting a cut in some fashion from consulting, from lobbying, from being involved in these trades. So the loss of some of these great extractive industries is not necessarily that great on the people. It will totally devastate the profits of these massive corporations, and we essentially have to, in a sense, have them completely reevaluate what they're doing and not really even think of it as a for-profit business while we're in this climate emergency. Think of it as a resource that we have to put into use in a new economy that is not profit-driven, because there's no way out of this trying to continue to do what we're doing. And the speed at which this problem is occurring is accelerating, and it will truly be horrifying in the 2025 to 2030 period if we're unlucky, or it'll be horrifying in 2030 to 2035. So there's another important piece of news I'll give you before I conclude, which is the idea of a climate departure, which I learned about. So the climate departure is when the average temperatures in an area change so much that the previous high now is lower than the new low. Okay? So this is when a climate completely shifts out of its old band 100%. So people have talked about this occurring potentially in 2047, but this could happen in a lot of places much sooner than that. And that essentially means we have to bus whole ecosystems from one area to another, which is not possible. It'll mean that you have 99% death of everything in an area, and you'll be able to perhaps transplant 1% of it. It's sort of like trying to transport the redwood forests of California to Canada. You simply can't do it. You can seed, so the whole world has to retreat 500 miles north as these temperature shifts occur. And we've seen migrations that seem to indicate that this may be maybe much faster now. In the past, it might have been in a decade that we might have had the kind of pressure that would, or maybe it was longer even, that would push animals and fish 500 miles further towards the poles, which has already happened. But these temperature shifts would require that kind of movement again, and many species can't migrate. And another factor is that many species are interconnected, so some of them can leave, but they're part of a system, ecosystem. So you can't just take bits of ecosystems out. Okay, so I wanted to give you folks an update. I'd like to talk more about what happened in Iraq, but it'll have to be another night. The U.S. and Iran are effectively at war right now. Okay, my name is Alexander Hagen. Good night and good luck.